Daimos didn't have a programmed fighting style. It fought exactly the way Kazuya fought, because the robot was just Kazuya's body at a different scale. That single design decision made every battle in this series read as character expression rather than military hardware. And it's the reason the fights still hold up when everything else from 1978 looks dated. By the end of this video, you'll know why the war between Earth and the Barmians never needed to happen. The one man who destroyed a peace deal rather than let it succeed. And exactly why this show left the mark it did on everyone who saw it. Number 10. The war that started as a rescue. Nobody told you this when you were watching. The Baam Empire wasn't invading Earth. Their planet was gone, destroyed. They were an entire civilization adrift, looking for somewhere to land. And their opening move was a diplomatic offer, a peaceful alliance, refugee negotiations in good faith between two species that actually had a shot at coexistence. The war didn't start because they wanted Earth. It started because the peace talks collapsed. That context reframes every fight sequence in the series. When Daimos punches a Barmian mech out of the sky, you're watching two terrified civilizations destroying each other because communication broke down at the worst possible moment. If deep dive anime history like this is your thing, subscribing means you get the next one the day it drops, not 6 months later when the algorithm decides you exist. Number 9. The transformation that made toy companies very, very happy. Daimos didn't just transform, it performed. Kazuya's personal jet, the big powered, would fly into docking position with the enormous Dia fighter transport, and the two vehicles would combine in a multi-stage sequence that became appointment television for kids who needed to see it every episode. The resulting robot didn't just assemble, it arrived like a heavyweight stepping into a ring. For the late 1970s, this kind of elaborate multi-vehicle combination was next-level engineering theater. Every stage had weight and drama built in deliberately. You watched it and genuinely believed that machine was constructed to fight. The toy manufacturers noticed immediately. Multi-component combining robot toys were already becoming a phenomenon in Japan, and Daimos fed that market with precision. Every kid who watched wanted the pieces, and every piece that snapped together was a small recreation of that sequence. Which means the transformation existed simultaneously as drama and as a 4-minute commercial for itself. That's a trick most shows couldn't pull off. Daimos did it every single week. Number 8. One man burned the world down because he hated peace. The war between Earth and the Baam Empire had a specific birthday, and a specific villain responsible for it. During the peace talks, the real negotiations, where Earth and the Barmians were genuinely close to a deal, General Olban had the Barmian king assassinated. Not in battle, not by accident. A deliberate, calculated act by an extremist who refused to let peace happen. That single betrayal shattered everything. The alliance collapsed, the shooting started, and two civilizations spent 44 episodes paying for one man's hatred. Olban isn't a complicated villain. He's a recognizable one, the true believer who would rather watch everything burn than watch his enemy survive. The devastating irony is clean and merciless. The Barmians came seeking life, and one of their own leaders guaranteed they'd find a war instead. Circle back to fact 10 for a moment. The original intent was coexistence. Olban killed that intent before it ever had a chance to breathe. Everything Kazuya and Erika suffered started right there, in a political betrayal that never needed to happen. Number 7. The bad guys had a legitimate excuse, and that made everything worse. When your villain has a genuine grievance, the story stops being comfortable. Admiral Richter and the Barmian military leadership weren't operating from pure evil. Their planet was dead. Their people needed land. Their king had just been murdered at the peace table by one of their own. From inside that context, the war made a brutal kind of sense. And that's exactly the problem. Director Tadao Nagahama understood that the most powerful conflicts aren't between good and evil. They're between two groups of frightened people who've been given every reason to hate each other and not quite enough reason to stop. The Barmians, as antagonists, carry genuine moral weight. You could root against them while simultaneously understanding them, a dramatically difficult trick to pull off in a 44-episode mecha series aimed at children. Most Saturday morning villains wanted to rule the world for vague, evil reasons. The Barmians wanted somewhere to sleep. That distinction is why they stayed with you. Number 6. One director made you cry during a robot show. Tadao Nagahama didn't just direct Daimos, he designed what the entire series was allowed to feel. Nagahama was the creative architect behind the Robot Romance Trilogy, The 3-series run that proved giant robot anime could carry genuine dramatic weight alongside its action sequences. His signature was the emotional through line, the human story underneath the mecha spectacle, and Daimos was the fullest expression of that philosophy. Where other directors of the era kept emotional content functional, Nagahama leaned into it. He wanted you invested in Kazuya and Erika as people before he wanted you thrilled by the battles. The battles meant more because of it. His ability to balance large-scale mechanical action with intimate romantic tragedy was unusual for the genre in 1978. He wasn't softening the robot show, he was expanding what a robot show was allowed to be, and the emotional hangover you got from a Daimos episode was his deliberate construction, built episode by episode with full intention. Number 5. The name itself was a warning. They named this robot after the Greek personification of terror, and somehow that feels exactly right. Daimos derives from Deimos, in Greek mythology, the personification of dread, twin brother of Phobos, both sons of Ares. The name wasn't accidental. It was a thematic statement embedded in the title itself. This is a show about terror, the terror of extinction, the terror of love across enemy lines, the terror of a war nobody originally wanted, but everyone seemed unable to stop. It's quietly poetic that the instrument of terror is piloted by a man seeking peace, and that the robot's most humanizing relationship is with a woman from the enemy civilization. The name carries the darkness. The story carries the light. The tension between those two things is the entire show, compressed into a single word. Somewhere in that production room, someone suggested Daimos, and somebody smarter immediately said yes. Number 4. The third act of a trilogy nobody knew was a trilogy. You may have watched the conclusion of one of anime history's most ambitious experiments without ever knowing it existed. Daimos was the third and final installment of Toei and Sunrise's Robot Romance Trilogy, following Combattler 5 and Voltes 5. The trilogy was a deliberate creative project, a series of shows that progressively pushed the super robot genre toward deeper emotional territory and more complex narrative structures. Each show in the sequence took the emotional investment further than the previous one had. By the time Daimos arrived in 1978, the formula had been refined across 2 prior series. The romance element wasn't a soft addition to attract different viewers. It was the central dramatic engine. And in Daimos, it ran hotter and more tragically than anything the trilogy had previously attempted. The trilogy format meant the creative team was building on established audience trust. Viewers were ready for bigger emotional swings because 2 prior series had prepared them. Daimos wasn't an experiment. It was the payoff on a long creative bet that emotional complexity belonged in giant robot anime. Number 3. She became a hero without ever piloting a robot. Erika is one of the most quietly revolutionary female characters in 1970s anime, and she did it entirely through courage rather than combat. The Barmian princess didn't fight in Daimos. She didn't pilot anything. Her power came from an absolute, unyielding commitment to peace, in an environment where peace was considered weakness, treason, or delusion. She crossed enemy lines emotionally, spiritually, and literally for a future that nobody around her believed was possible. Her story with Kazuya wasn't subplot decoration on the main action story. It was the thesis statement of the entire series. She represented the possibility that the war was a mistake, that 2 peoples could choose differently, that hatred wasn't destiny. For young viewers watching in 1978, and for the Filipino, Southeast Asian, and Latin American audiences who later embraced Daimos with extraordinary passion, Erika became genuinely iconic. She wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was trying to rescue everybody. In a genre defined by fists and firepower, she was the most powerful character in the show. Number 2. The martial arts robot was actually the pilot in a bigger body. Here's the detail that separates Daimos from every other giant robot of its era, and it's the one hiding in plain sight. Kazuya Ryuzaki was a martial artist before he was a mecha pilot. His fighting expertise, the punches, the kicks, the wrestling combinations, the Daimos fist, the Daimos kick, wasn't programmed into the robot. It was translated directly through Kazuya's own body into the machine's movements. Daimos fought exactly the way its pilot fought, because the pilot was the fighting style. This was genuinely groundbreaking in 1978. Most giant robots of the period were artillery platforms. They pointed weapons and fired. Daimos brawled. It moved with personal ferocity and individual technique. Every battle read as an extension of a human duel rather than a military engagement, which meant you could read the robot's performance as character expression rather than mechanical function. The distinction sounds subtle until you watch both side by side, and then it's impossible to unsee. What it meant in practice was that Daimos had a fighting voice. Other robots of the era were interchangeable in combat. Swap the color scheme and the weapon loadout, and the battle reads the same. Daimos read like Kazuya. Aggressive when he was angry, precise when he was focused, personal in a way that no artillery platform ever could be. The connection between Kazuya's martial identity and Daimos' combat personality runs through every fight sequence in the series. The robot threw hands the way Kazuya threw hands, with conviction, with studied technique, and with something personal at stake every time. That's the difference between watching a weapon fire and watching a fighter compete. Daimos competed. It always competed. Number 1. The love story was the real weapon all along. Take every giant robot anime ever made. Ask which one built its entire architecture. Not its subplot, its entire architecture, around the premise that love between enemies is the only thing powerful enough to stop a manufactured war. That's Daimos. That was always Daimos. The robot was the spectacle. The martial arts were the hook. The transformation sequence sold the toys. But the reason this show embedded itself into the memory of every viewer who encountered it, in Japan, in the Philippines, across Southeast Asia and Latin America, where it became a genuine cultural phenomenon, not just a popular import, was Kazuya and Erika. They weren't Romeo and Juliet with mechs. The tragedy in Daimos wasn't fate or family pride. It was political hatred, manufactured war, and the very human choice to keep choosing each other anyway, episode after episode, against every structural force designed to make that choice impossible. That's a different and more demanding kind of love story, and Nagahama understood exactly what he was building. The show asked a question in 1978 that has not aged. If two people can see past everything their civilizations built to divide them, why can't everyone else? Daimos never answered that question. It just kept asking it, punch after punch, episode after episode, until the finale gave you the closest thing to hope the story could honestly offer. And the audiences who responded most intensely weren't the ones the show was originally designed for. Filipino viewers, Latin American kids watching dubbed prints years after the Japanese broadcast, teenagers in countries where the war subtext landed differently. They found something in Kazuya and Erika that their own Saturday morning cartoons weren't offering them. A love story with political stakes. A war with a human cause. The possibility that the right two people, choosing correctly, could change something that seemed structurally inevitable. That's not a cartoon. That's a piece of dramatic storytelling that happened to feature a giant robot who knew karate. And that is exactly why it belongs at number 1. Bonus fact, the end that earned every tear. After everything, the war, the assassination, the impossible odds, 44 episodes of two people choosing each other against every institutional force designed to prevent it, they actually made it. Daimos concludes with Kazuya and Erika's love surviving the conflict that was designed to destroy it. And that survival becomes the foundation of peace between Earth and the Barmian survivors. It's not a clean ending. Too much was lost. Too many people died for Olban's hatred and the war he manufactured. But it's a real ending. One that earns its emotion because the series built every layer of it with full intention. The bittersweet quality is precisely what makes it land. A completely happy ending would have been dishonest to everything the series constructed. A tragic ending would have said the hatred won. The actual ending says something harder and truer. Love can outlast war, but war leaves marks that don't disappear. For a generation of viewers who watched Kazuya and Erika navigate the impossible across all 44 episodes, that conclusion felt genuinely earned. They didn't just end up together. They became the reason two civilizations chose something better. 12 facts, 10 counted, 1 bonus, and 1 that the whole series was built on. And honestly, we barely touched what makes Daimos one of the most quietly important anime of the entire super robot era. The martial artist who became a robot. The princess who became a revolutionary by refusing to fight. The director who made the emotional architecture as precise as the mechanical spectacle. The war that started with a peace deal and ended with one anyway. Every layer of this show was doing something deliberate. So here's the question. Which fact changed how you see it? The revelation that Daimos fought the way Kazuya fought. His body, his technique, his conviction in a machine. The Barmians arriving not as conquerors, but as the desperate. Or Erika, the most powerful character in the series, doing it entirely without a cockpit. Drop your answer in the comments. The Daimos faithful are out there. I know you're watching.